are doing. What all of them are looking to do, provided it's a technique to enhance the spine and improve communication in the system, is it's looking to say, where could I put a force into the body of some type and some quality and some magnitude that results in the body's own organizing wisdom, making a constructive change in the spine and the person's health. So it's where can I get access into the self-organizing healing system? That's what it's about. And at that time, we were teaching this traditional spinal analysis with the spinous process, and we hold a contact on the spinous process on the vertebra, and with a particular direction for flexion, extension, and lateral bending. And the intent was the force for there would be transmitted where? To the articulations. Because the action actually happens in articulation. I started realizing that and said, well, why not go directly to the area around where the change is occurring, the articulation? What if I go directly there? And what if the rapport that I was asking people to feel at the area of the spinous could be found at the articulation? I found at the area of the articulation, around the vertebral-dural relationships of the phasing system, there was an area of great rapport. I would touch my finger on the spot, and I would be mindless for a second. It would feel just absolutely a wonderful feeling, almost like an alpha rhythm or brainwave would occur, just mindless for a moment. And I realized that that's an area that doesn't lose its sense of purity. It's an area that's not changed or tainted by distress. It's an area that has available energy that's unbound, that's available to be able to create change. With that, I came up with the idea of a spinal gateway. Now, around that time, I was involved as a consultant in a research project with acupuncture, and they found out as the acupuncturists put the needle in and twisted it around, that actually as the acupuncturist moved the needle was moving along the area of change in highest electrical conductivity and hydration. And actually he or she was following it around where there's more conductivity, more hydration, more aliveness. And the conclusion of that study that was being made at that time, before it was published, at that point, the researcher was saying, said, well, I think the acupuncture point is a temporal spatial shift. It's a shift in time and space. It's not a location. It's a probability for change. And I started thinking about that and said, oh my God, that's it. The spinal gateway is around the vertebral area of the vertebra dura, and it's an area, a focal point that allows the system to change. It's an area of probability between energy states. This may seem far stretched or far out there. It's really consistent with where modern science is about how life works. And basically, everything, all change, everything occurs at the phase transition between states. And that's what the spinal gateway is, a transition between states, where they are now and where they're going to be. At that spot, with rich energy and more energy coming into it, the system can organize in a higher order. And that's what it's all about. With all contacts for flexion extension, make sure the finger is placed in a flexion extension position. With all contacts for lateral bending gateways, we want to make sure the contact with traction is lateral bending. When palpating for the spinal gateway, it's important you feel with your finger and you register here and here. When palpating the spinal gateway, palpate with your finger, but your focus of attention needs to be not on the finger, needs to be in your heart center, or in the center of your feeling, or whatever the center is of your connection with people. This is essential. If you're going to palpate for rapport where your attention is on your finger, you'll consistently be in a spot of tension. You'll consistently be in a spot not where there's available energy, but the articulations that are in defense. And I'd like to mention that a little bit further. I mentioned you have a spinal gateway, and the gateway is the access point in. When the system gets defensive, and there's experience that cannot be experienced, and at that point there's a freeze that occurs in the body. At that particular point, depending upon the phase and the vertebra associated with the phase, the articulations, the joints of that phase distort. What that does is say, I'm not dealing with this. I cannot experience this energy now. Not now, no, or not this way. And as it does, it immutes the experience of the body and starts a process of disassociation from the energy that was experienced in the moment. And actually, the energy and information in the moment is in the moment. If we cannot experience it, it's frozen. It's like frozen in time, and like a mirror broken into 1,000 places, the resonance of that particular energy, of that particular tension, of that trauma, of that event is actually migrates to different parts of the body. And it migrates with 5 types of tracks of tissue, 5 patterns, 5 oscillatory frequencies of the phases. And the whole idea behind this is, as we're taking care of someone, we want to have that which was become separate and segregated to become integrated. The energy that was kept to push it away is energy that unifies it again. And when the parts that become separate come back to home, come back to center, additional positive strategies and benefits and depth of experience also occur in the learning process. Why is this important? What I realized is if I hold a contact in the spinous process, some of the force will be going to those articulations that are in defense. Some will be going to the more effective articulations. So I said, I don't want any of the energy to go to any of the areas of defense. I want all of the energy to go to the area that actually is connected to the body's ability to reorganize, that there's more available energy, hence the spinal gateway. So for every one spinal gateway, initially, there are probably 2 or 3 articulations that are really associated with defense. And those are the ones that don't move freely. Those are the ones the body's not so aware of. If it was aware of it, it would self-regulate it. If it was aware of it, it was self-regulated if it had enough energy. The idea in each of the levels of care is to help it become aware and find the energy to self-regulate. So as these gateways, as the first gateway is established in level 1, it's just barely a contact, just barely a small touch that has rapport. As that builds energy and gets deeper in each level of care, it sends energy to other articulations that phase. And step by step, those articulations go through different movements. Those movements are associated with a level of care. With all of this, how do we go about taking a level 1 spinal gateway assessment and leading to a contact? I'm having him elongate his neck because in this position, the middle vertebrae are all smushed together. They're compressed in a particular direction. If I want to hold a contact, it's like finding a contact on a cell membrane where you have to have a receptor site. You have to have the available parking spot on the cell for the receptor into the receptor site. Well, consider in a similar way. There must be the contact has to get at the spinal gateway in that specific spot to make a difference. And these spinal gateways are small. They're very small. The actual distance, for example, it may be, for example, C1 on 2, the first and second cervical gateway. At that point, that's in the area of the articulation of C1 and C2. If we actually get on the C2 spot, it's a phase 4 gateway because it deals with the number 2. If it deals with the first cervical C1, it's phase 2. It's that close. So it might be half the size of my pinky fingernail as the actual size of the gateway. So we need to be aware of where it is in space. Palpation is a skill that's a lifetime skill to know where you are in space and see that you're really on that particular segment. It's okay to palpate a few times to be certain. So this is where you brush up on your palpation skills to make sure you're also segmentally in the appropriate place, because that's where the contact needs to be placed. So when I palpate here, and I'm going to palpate for the gateway. If I'm palpating for cervical gateway, I'm going to palpate pulling up this way. Now, I'm going inferior to superior. The contact will be in the opposite direction. So I'm going like this here, and I'm going inferior to superior for the actual traction to find the gateway. But when I'm going to make the contact, I'm going to go be making the opposite direction. First, we need to do this. We have to find out where is the gateway. Well, the flexion extension gateways are not along the spinous processes, and they're not along the transverse process. They're closer to articular pillar. They're a little bit more laterally. So as you palpate, you'll be palpating a little more laterally, and you'll find this spot that as you palpate here, as I palpate, I find a spot in that segmental area, the C1 and C2, that just feels sweet. The best way to describe it. My physiology goes into a sense of rapport with the practice member. There's a sense of grace or ease with it. And I'm mentioning this because the best way to answer this is it produces a positive physiological response, not only for the person, but for you also. So as I'm finding, I find that area. Yes. Now, where's the most superior portion of it? Where's the most inferior portion of it? Where's the most medial portion? Where's the most lateral? And you must identify that. So at this point, I don't feel it. I feel the rapport here. I lose it here. I may feel it at this spot. Here, I lose it there. Find the exact small zone. It doesn't necessarily mean anatomical center. The energetic center, that's the spot we want to be at. The place that has the most available energy. How do you know? It's the place that as you touch it, you have also the greatest physiological response, and that will be also a response with a person of one of more ease happening. So we're going to find the gateway that way. Flex, extension, and the parameters or borders of it. This is a skill set that takes practice, it takes time. You need to hold the contact someplace. You might as well hold it at the most energy efficient spot. And the reality is the reward for you as a practitioner is so great in doing it because the response in the practice member is so great when you get to the center of the gateway that there's encouragement for you to go further. Also, it feels great for you. What I'm looking for is the most peaceful feeling you could have. And that's the feeling that occurs when a system is rich in energy. It supports being there and has enough energy to support life. Feel with your finger, palpate with your finger, feel here, and you'll know the energy-rich areas. The lateral bending gateway is found, guess where? Laterally. And it's going to be found, and if you were to do a rotational move for someone, a cervical rotational maneuver, you would be tractioning at about the same spot as the lateral bending gateways will be. It's not quite at the transverse, but pretty close to that. And this here, you're going to have to find the segmental level, where's the most superior, the inferior, medial and lateral, and you'll be tractioning this way and find this energetic center of that. If you actually, when you make contact energetic center, the practice member is usually aware of it also. For a moment, if you ask them a question, they may go, what? They didn't hear you. There's a suspension of the ordinary, which is essential. A suspension of the ordinary pattern is essential for new pattern. Suspension of the ordinary leads you to not ordinary. Not ordinary plus energy plus information leads to extraordinary. The spinal gateway is a suspension in the existing patterns of the defense around the area. We want the brain and the body to become more and more aware of that phase transition which allows change to occur.